Hi, my name is Tiffany and I'm a graduate writing consultant at the Wingspan. Today's presentation will be about developing a strong argument by understanding the elements of an argument and how to create an argumentative thesis statement. The Writing Center is part of a larger Center for Learning and Writing Support. We offer support services in the 4 different categories listed on the slide. Writing support through undergraduate and graduate one-on-one writing consultants to brainstorm, draft, and revise writing projects. Tutoring services, which includes one-on-one and small group tutoring services for a variety of courses. Supplemental instruction, where SI leaders provide study strategies for note-taking, organization, and test preparation. And peer academic coaching, which includes individual and group support to help students set and achieve goals and develop behaviors, habits, and strategies for success in college. During this presentation, we will talk about qualities of an effective argument, strategies for writing a strong thesis statement, and how to use counter-arguments. To begin, let's go and review what an argument is. In the traditional sense, an argument means making a claim that can be supported with logical reasons. Arguments do take a side, so they must be debatable. You cannot argue a fact, but you can argue an opinion. While most arguments are persuasive, they do not necessarily have to be. As long as the audience can see how you reached your position based on the reasons provided, you have given an argument. When making a persuasive argument, most people use some combination of rhetorical appeals. Rhetoric is the art of persuasion, and so these are strategies used to persuade the audience to agree with you. So the first appeal is ethos, which relates to the credibility of the person arguing. Next is logos, or logic, which is the most common appeal. Here, people use facts, statistics, expert testimony, evidence from sources, etc. Lastly, people often also appeal to the audience emotions by trying to make them angry, sad, nostalgic, and others. These appeals can be used in a differing amount, but are often part of an argument. So how do we make a strong argument? While you're writing and revising an argument, you should be sure to write arguments that are narrow, clear, logical, and relevant. Narrow means that your topic is specific. Narrowing your topic is helpful to direct your research and to make sure that your argument stays on a single topic. This is the what that we discussed earlier. Your main points must be also very clear and easy to follow for the audience. They should be able to quickly identify your side of the argument through your thesis and be able to understand what you're saying. Check to see if the order in which you present your evidence and claims seem logical for the intended flow of the paper. Think about how to present smaller pieces of information that naturally build up the argument. The final part of a strong argument is relevance. You need to make sure your thesis is relevant to both your audience and to you. This tells the audience why this paper matters and why it matters to you. Before getting into the details of producing a specific argument, let's go over what elements are usually included in an argument. You will have your main claim, so the position that you are taking, as part of your thesis statement, which we will go over in more detail in a minute. You have to support your position with several logical reasons. These often become the topic sentences for the body paragraphs of your essay. Within each of those paragraphs, you then need evidence to prove your points. Evidence can come in many forms and often depends on the instructor's directions, such as whether if you need to use sources or not. You could use real-world examples, personal experiences, or information from sources in a variety of ways. Lastly, many but not all arguments include one or more counter-arguments where you address the other side of the issue. Some helpful guiding questions can be, what is your knowledge level right now? How much credible literature is available on this topic? Try to genuinely consider your topic and all the possible arguments before taking a side. Do some research on multiple perspectives and why people have those opinions. These perspectives can also help you establish a counter-argument later on. While you're doing this work, it's important to say that your claim can change with your research. It is totally fine and you can just change your thesis statement. It is also important to know your audience. Who are you writing for? This will also determine how much background information or definitions to include in the essay. If your audience is the general public, don't use terminology they may not understand. And if your audience is made up of specialists in the field, don't explain basic concepts. So there are many types of arguments you can use in an essay. Each of these will have different strategies to strengthen your argument and will be useful in different situations. So here are just a few of the common types of arguments. Feel free to pause the video and look at the examples. Now let's look at thesis statements. If this section does not apply to you, you can go ahead and skip to the next section, which is counter arguments. Keeping in mind that thesis statements are the core of your argument, your thesis statement will influence every point of your argument, and both of these elements should develop together. Use your argument to modify your thesis statement as you write, and at the same time, use your thesis statement to make sure that your argument stays on track. Once again, your thesis statement is reflecting your prior knowledge, so what the paper is about, your research, how this is supported by evidence, and your perspective on the topic, so why this matters. Your thesis statement is a very important part of your paper because it is a response to what is going on in the scholarly conversation or literature about your topic. Your thesis statement can change as you find out more and more about your topic. Thesis statements, like your writing as a whole, have an intended audience. You need to make sure that your thesis statement applies to that audience. For instance, if you are writing to the general population rather than specialists, you should avoid using overly technical language. And if you've written a good thesis statement, it will clearly address the prompt and it will be located in the first paragraph of your writing, typically the first or the last sentence of your introduction. So while you're writing your thesis statement, it should be a complete sentence. Inform the reader about the topic of your paper, include the main idea, connect to all parts of your paper, and be specific enough to fit the size of the essay. When you write your thesis, it should not be a phrase, question, definition, or a fact. Your thesis statement should tell your reader what your paper is about. What is the topic? What is the argument? And what claims will be used to support the argument? It should be able to show the reader how your evidence will prove your claim. What sort of evidence should the reader expect from this paper? And how do they know that this claim is not just an opinion? Now, let's take a step back from the thesis statement specifically and talk about how to develop your argument more broadly and how your thesis statement can help with that. When you write your thesis, you will have a starting point for your paper. The next thing to do is to determine your supporting points. These are the main reasons for your side. Consider the position you took in your thesis statement. Why did you take that side? What are your reasons? How many reasons you will need will depend on the length of the paper. The majority of your body paragraphs will focus on the reasons for your side. And within each paragraph, you first want to identify the reason you will illustrate in that paragraph through a clear and direct topic sentence. This topic sentence should tie back to the thesis statement. You then also need to prove your points with evidence and explain why the evidence is relevant to your point. This can help you answer the why or so what questions that we talked about earlier in the presentation. Before I wrap things up today and summarize today's discussion, let's talk a little bit more about the counterargument, or the counterclaim and rebuttal. Once you've established your evidence and support, you'll have to acknowledge that there is another side to this argument. Since your claim must be debatable, that means there will be another perspective on this issue. Try stepping away from your perspective and consider what arguments might be made from that perspective. How would you write that perspective? Now, return to your perspective. How would you respond to this counterclaim? And how would you rebut their argument? When including a counterargument, you will want to do three things. You first need to acknowledge what the other side believes. Then you can concede a little bit. This means you give in a bit and say something nice about the other side. However, you do ultimately want to come back to your own side. Then you need a rebuttal. What is flawed about their point of view? There are areas it doesn't consider or have changed over time, or are they incorrect? Again, keep your tone fairly neutral and don't attack the other side. You can explore the counter-argument in the same way that you begin to organize your thoughts and research, so a great question to ask if the research that you've already conducted can shed some light on the counter-argument. What were some previous points of disagreement? What else might someone say about this perspective? Now, to summarize, let's finish by going over the main components of an argument. Some of these you'll probably be familiar with from your previous writing and our previous conversation. First, you'll need to make a claim in your thesis statement. This must be an opinion that is debatable. You'll then need reasons to support that opinion, which become the main supporting points throughout the body of your paper. You'll also want to determine what sort of data and evidence you can use to prove those reasons are true, and follow that evidence with analysis explaining how the evidence connects to your argument. Lastly, you want to show the opposing view on your topic through the counterclaim, and then refute it in the rebuttal. Ultimately, you should come back to your own side and demonstrate that it is stronger than the opposite. Now you have an argument. That's all I have for today. If you have any questions about the writing process or anything we've discussed today, you can schedule a consultation with one of our writing consultants at writing.ku.edu. We have in-person, e-tutoring, and video conferencing appointments available, so you can choose the format that you feel most comfortable with. Thank you.